Hi, St. Mark's. I am so excited to be doing today's connected video. By luck of the draw, I got July 28th, which is the day that our church remembers Johann Sebastian Bach, George Frederick Handel, and Henry Purcell. But since it is July 28th, Bach is the most important of these three because today is the day that he would have died in 1750. But before I get to Bach, let me talk briefly about the other two. George Frederick Handel is a German composer who grew up in Germany, but because of his love of opera, eventually ended up in Italy, and then after a short time in Italy, ended up spending most of his career, in England. George Frederick Handel is best known for his work in the realms of opera and oratorio. He also wrote organ concertos, church anthems, and other genres as well. George Frederick Handel was such a big force in the arts scene in England that when he died, he was given a state funeral in Westminster Abbey, and he is buried in Westminster Abbey as well. And the third musician that is honored on today's feast day is Henry Purcell or Purcell. Purcell grew up in a slum of London, which is under the shadow of Westminster Abbey. Eventually, he became the organist at Westminster Abbey and also for the Chapel Royal. It's particularly fitting that Purcell is buried near the organ in Westminster Abbey, along with many other composers. Purcell composed many genres, from orchestral works to opera to choral anthems. He also composed the famous hymn Westminster Abbey, "Christ is made the sure foundation." But today I'm going to focus on the one musician that has no connection to Westminster Abbey whatsoever, or even to the Church of England, Johann Sebastian Bach. Johann Sebastian Bach is one of my favorite composers of all time. His music takes up more space in my music cabinet than any other composer's works. I think I own every piece of organ music that Johann Sebastian Bach ever composed, most of which I have in multiple editions, so they've been edited by various scholars. I also keep a statuette of Johann Sebastian Bach right here on my shelf. You can see him. In fact, let me bring him closer so you can see him in the camera. There's my Bach statuette. I got Bach from my piano teacher when I was growing up. Once you learned a certain piece, you got a Bach statue, or Beethoven, Mozart, or Schumann, depending on what you were studying. I love Johann Sebastian Bach so much that I even named my cat Sebastian after him. A friend of mine who also loves Bach was in a playful mood for a birthday at one point, and she even gave me my own personal Bach action figure, which I just love. It even comes with a little bench, and you can go online and make an origami clavichord for him to sit at. I've never done that. I've never taken him out of the box, but he's really fun to have back here. Johann Sebastian Bach was born into an extremely musical family. They have a long legacy that lasted more than 2 centuries. Many members of the Bach family served in church positions or provided music for princely patrons as court or chamber musicians. Johann Sebastian Bach's father, Johann Ambrosius, served as the director of town music in Eisenach, where Johann Sebastian Bach was born on March 21st, 1685. Johann Ambrosius Bach died when Johann Sebastian was only 10 years old. At that point, he moved to a city called Ohrdruf, where his older brother, Johann Christoph, lived. You may have caught on to the fact that many of the Bach family members have the name Johann, which is John in German. Yes, many of them do, and yes, it gets very confusing to keep them straight. Johann Christoph Bach was Johann Sebastian's first keyboard teacher. Johann Christoph underestimated the genius of his younger brother and gave him pieces that were far too simple. Johann Sebastian craved harder, more complex music. Johann Sebastian knew that his older brother had a collection of works by famous composers of the day, including Froberger, Pachelbel, Buxtehude, Bruns, and others. But Johann Christoph kept these locked in a cabinet. He didn't allow his brother any access to them whatsoever. But crafty little Johann Sebastian realized that his small hands at the age of 10 could reach in between the lattice work of this cabinet and get the manuscript and pull it through. So he would do this night after night after night, and he would stay up until the wee hours of the morning, copying this manuscript by hand with no candle. He did it all by moonlight because he didn't want to be caught by his brother. He spent 6 laborious months copying and copying and copying late at night. But Johann Christoph eventually found his younger brother's manuscript. He confiscated it, and Johann Sebastian never saw his beloved midnight manuscript again until after his brother died. Johann Sebastian Bach attended school at Ohrdruf, where his brother lived, until he received a scholarship to attend a secondary school in Lüneburg. His first position after he graduated from school was a minor position in the court at Weimar. Bach didn't stay at Weimar very long because soon after he became the organist in a small town called Arnstadt. He didn't stay there very long because soon after he became concertmaster at Weimar. His next post was as the Kapellmeister at Köthen, serving in the court of Prince Leopold, who was musical himself and a patron and close friend of Bach. While Prince Leopold and Bach were close friends, eventually Leopold married a woman who didn't have much interest in music. The music of the court suffered because money was being directed to her other pursuits, and Bach went looking for another position. At this point in Bach's life, a very important job had come open at St. Thomas School in Leipzig, Germany. Bach applied not only to become the cantor, the teacher, the lead musician of this school, but also as the director of music for the major churches, the St. Nicholas Church and the St. Thomas Church in Leipzig. Bach had a certain hesitation. Although the school was renowned for its music program, and the Thomaskirche in Leipzig today still has a phenomenal music program, Bach did not want to take the title of cantor. He wanted to stay a Kapellmeister because it comes with a certain level of prestige that cantor just didn't. So he was a little hesitant to apply for the job. Also, as it turns out, Bach was the third choice for the position. The town council were unable to secure other more famous musicians like Telemann or Graupner, and they had to settle for Bach. In the end, Bach served the St. Thomas School and the major churches of Leipzig for 27 years as cantor. St. Thomas School was interesting. It was scholarship-based, requiring proficiency in classical languages as well as music. Bach spent a lot of his career fiercely defending the balance of the school's curriculum. Heads of school would often come to him and say, oh, the boys are spending too much time on music. They need to be studying Latin instead. But Bach said, no. We are a music school first, and then a language school second. As a side gig, Bach was also known as a renowned organ inspector. Toward the end of the organ building process, there is a step called voicing. And voicing is going through and regulating every pipe in an organ to make sure that they all speak together, that they sound like a whole, a single unit for making music. At the end of this voicing process, the builder and the customers would enlist the services of an organ inspector to come in to make sure that everything is up to snuff and done to the best proficiency possible. Remember, the organ, for many, many centuries, in fact, I think until the 19th century, was the single most complicated machine known to humans. So of course, if you're going to invest in a very complicated piece of machinery, you want to know that what you have is going to work and is going to last. The review of a professional organ inspector could also make or break the reputation of an organ builder. So as you can imagine, they wanted the most favorable inspectors they could find. I've also read that organ inspectors were often paid in creative ways. At one point, it was the custom for the organ inspector to be paid with wine equal to what would fit in the largest pipe of the organ he was inspecting. So some organs have very large, I mean this big around, organ pipes that are 32 feet long. You can only imagine how much wine might fit in that. In his personal life, Johann Sebastian Bach was with Barbara Bach, a distant cousin of his. At one point, Johann Sebastian Bach went on a trip with his friend Prince Leopold to Curtin. And when he returned from Curtin, he got home, and there he discovered that his wife had not only died while he was gone, but she had also been buried, so he missed his own wife's funeral. Bach did not stay single for very long. The very next year, he married Anna Magdalena Bach. She's the daughter of a trumpeter and also a respected musician in her own right. Together, Johann Sebastian and Anna Magdalena had 13 children. Of Bach's 20 children, yes, you heard that correct, 20 children, only 9 survived to adulthood. 3 of these 9 became professional musicians. Johann Christoph Friedrich was the Kapellmeister for the court of Bückeburg for nearly 40 years. Carl Philipp Emanuel, or C.P.E. Bach, even worked as a composer for Princess Anna Amalia, who was a fascinating character in music history, and she had an obsession with the organ. She commissioned an organ to be built in the palace where she lived, and she hired C.P.E. Bach to compose pieces for her to play. C.P.E. Bach and his brother Johann Christian Bach became prosperous and had even more success in their own lifetimes than their father. Johann Sebastian Bach had a tenacity about him. He had several issues with the authorities from the Leipzig town council and the heads of the St. Thomas school. Bach seemed to have a talent for getting his way by appealing to a higher power. He even appealed to the king twice for matters related to the school. Bach enjoyed a good battle of wits, especially when he felt someone else was trying to take advantage of him. He just used his words and put them back in their place. Bach also had a reputation for being impatient and unable to tolerate incompetence. These 2 character traits led to a street fight. Bach was 18. He was in his first post in Arnstadt, which required him to teach students who were his own age and even a little older than he was. One of Bach's responsibilities in this post was to teach Latin to the musicians. The story goes that Bach had called a 21-year-old student named Gaius Bach a, quote, nanny goat bassoonist, end quote, in class one day. Gaius Bach did not like this. He met Bach in a dark alley, poked Bach with a stick repeatedly, and called him a dirty dog. Bach was not pleased and drew his sword. Thankfully, others in the street overheard the scuffle and put a stop to it before anyone got hurt. It might go without saying, but in case there's any doubt, Johann Sebastian Bach was a deeply religious man. His Lutheran faith was the most important part of his life, hence his decision to make music in the church. The vast majority of his compositional output was music for the church, especially his cantatas, which are mostly sacred and intended for use in Lutheran services. However, a few secular cantatas came in as well. The most notable one in my mind is called the Coffee Cantata, in which a young maiden, a young girl, loves coffee so much and spends so much time in coffee houses that her father is worried that she may never fall in love with a man and get married. Though he had fun writing some secular cantatas as well, Bach never forgot that the worship of God is the ultimate reason to make music. Even when he was composing, he would write J period, J period at the top of his manuscript, which is a shorthand for the Latin words Jesu juva, meaning Jesus, help. At the end of the manuscript, he would often write the letters SDG for Soli Deo Gloria. To God alone be the glory. In his free time, Johann Sebastian Bach dedicated much of his time to reading theological texts and scriptural commentaries as well. Bach's religious views were pretty typical for that part of Eastern Germany where he lived in his day. He was a very Orthodox Lutheran. He was opposed to the pietism that was beginning to creep in, this idea that the individual's religious experience is more important than corporate worship. Bach believed in corporate worship and liturgy and coming together as a community. Johann Sebastian Bach is known to have loved music of many different styles, new music and old music, and music from different countries. Particularly in Bach's day, each country in Europe had a slightly different way of composing music. You know, what was in vogue in the French court was not the same as the German court or the Italian court or the English court. And so each country had a slightly different way of writing music. Bach loved hearing these different influences. And we didn't have Apple Music or CDs or records or cassette tapes or 8-tracks or any way of recording music. So the only way of hearing a musician perform is to end up in the same place as that musician. Bach is known to have traveled more than 200 miles on foot to hear the prevailing musicians of his day. One of the most famous trips that Bach took was to the city of Lübeck to hear Dietrich Buxtehude at the St. Mary's Church there. And he was supposed to be there for a period of time and ended up deciding to stay a little bit longer because, oh, nobody's going to miss me. But when he got home, he was actually thrown in prison for abandoning his post. Another of my favorite stories about Bach traveling to hear a musician was recorded by Johann Abraham Birnbaum. And the story goes that the famed French organist Louis Marchand came to Dresden for a concert tour. Bach caught wind of his performance and sent a collegial letter to Marchand, challenging him to a musical duel of sorts. They established the requirements of the competition. It included improvisation as well as performing works that they had composed. Each musician took his turn practicing on the organ in the concert venue where they're doing the duel. They found suitable judges and publicized the event to the public. When the time for the duel came, the audience was assembled, the judges were assembled in a panel, they're ready to listen, to discuss, to debate, and Bach was ready to go, but Marchand was nowhere to be found. As it turns out, Marchand had left town by stagecoach before dawn that morning. He was too spooked. He couldn't face dueling with Bach. As Birnbaum recorded in a letter, I think, he says, "Doubtless the famous Frenchman found his talents too weak to withstand the powerful assaults of his expert and valiant opponent. Otherwise, he would not have sought refuge in so hasty a flight." Johann Sebastian Bach died on July 28, 1750. He had had a series of operations on his eyes because he suffered from poor eyesight. And these operations were not successful. One of them eventually led to an infection that led to his death. Some people postulate that Bach's eyesight came from his childhood when he stayed up late at night copying that midnight manuscript in dim light. As I've mentioned in some of my previous Music Monday videos, Johann Sebastian Bach loved the harpsichord. He spent at least 15 minutes a day on harpsichord maintenance. That's tuning, but also likely replacing the quills that pluck the strings of the harpsichord. In his day, they were made from the feathers of crows. So crow quill was what he was cutting and inserting into the jacks for his harpsichord. I'll play the Praeludium and Fugue in G major for you today, but I've also put together a playlist of several of Bach's more famous works and pieces that I think you'll all enjoy. So I hope you'll take a listen to the playlist. The link is in the description box down below. Happy Bach Day and Handel Day and Purcell Day, and I'll see you soon.
Uh-oh, you're evaluating my work.
I am.
Are you subscribed?
I will with the red button.
And give us a thumbs up.
I'm a fan, of course.